So, so today we're going to talk about a topic following the events with the publication of the Reflection 70B. That is kind of interesting right now in the AI community, which is reflection tuning. So, before talking about what reflection tuning is important to know what instruction tuning is actually, because reflection tuning is a way of improving data sets and data in general that will be useful for instruction tuning LLMs. So instruction tuning is a way of fine-tuning LLMs after they went through their unsupervised training just on raw data. These LLMs get fine-tuned or trained using a set of instructions and responses to try to improve the model to follow human instructions and to make it more targeted on what the user is actually asking, so that is more useful and versatile. And an example is ChatGPT, for example, that after its unsupervised training, went through some instruction tuning to become a conversational model. So the issue is that these instruction tuning datasets are usually synthetically generated, and so they can possibly have a lot of low quality instances within them. And studies that we will mention show that low quality data in some in training sets of instruction tuning can strongly worsen LLM performance. And on the other hand, a very small amount of high quality data can hugely benefit and target the LLM behavior. Examples were like Llama, in which a Llama model was fine-tuned just using 1,000 instruction response prompts, and the performance hugely improved compared to a non-instruction tuned model. Or Alpagasus, that was an improved version of the Alpaca model, in which of the 52K instances from the Alpaca dataset, just 9K was selected and used to fine-tune a model that was performing better than the original model. So based on this idea is where reflection tuning comes in. In 2023, these guys from the University of Maryland published this paper introducing the idea of reflection tuning, that is basically a way of refining and improving the quality of these instruction tuning datasets. And then they published a new paper this year where they refined this technique. So the objective of reflection tuning is to autonomously find a way to improve these datasets, and following this, improve the LLM performance. And what they introduced is to improve both the instruction part of the dataset and the reflection and the response part of the data instances. And they do it by introducing this methodology where from these synthetically generated datasets, they apply some criteria first on the instruction. So you have these instruction response datasets. They apply first some criteria to the instruction, and they have this Oracle model that evaluates this instruction and how it is actually following some predefined criteria, and then gives some feedback. And then they do a similar thing for the response to have these improved pairs of instruction and response that will then be used to train these models that they call recycled models, because they come from these data sets that were low quality and then brought to a higher quality and are able to train improved versions of original models. So here is where it comes the Reflection 70B. So first of all, I want to say that reflection tuning is surely part of the training of Reflection 70B, and the concept of how reflection tuning works is surely embedded within the model and within what the how the model responds to prompts. But I want to stress that reflection tuning is a way of improving data sets that will then be used for instruction tuning. And surely the Reflection 70B, being a fine-tuned version of Llama, has some instruction tuning within its training. But the innovation of this model is to bring reflection tuning in every response that the model is giving to the user. So it applies these rules that the reflection tuning papers introduced and applies them to every single prompt and response that the model is giving. So this is as I was saying, an open source LLM model that is a fine-tuned version of Llama 3.1, introduced by these two guys mainly. Is Matt Schomer. Matt Schomer is the CEO of Hyperwrite AI, and Sahil Chaudhary, which is the CEO of Glaive. That is a platform that they use to train entirely the model, to generate the data sets and to make the training. And they claim that this model has reached crazy performances, beating any closed or open source model existing right now. And so as I was saying, they use reflection tuning to embed, they embed reflection tuning within every response that the model is giving. And so they allow the LLM basically to recognize its own mistakes and correct them. And these are the performances that they claim to have reached. So they basically beat any other model existing in any performance except for Claude. And for example, GPT-4o is worse in any benchmark result. And then here's just a short slide on how they trained the model. So they generated 100,000 synthetic samples, so not a huge data set. And then they built on the idea of chain of thought to, as I was saying before, try to make the model understand its own mistakes and fix them, which was tricky based on their sayings, because it's easy to make the model make more mistakes when you try to ask in the system prompt, correct any mistake that you do. So they had to do a lot of iteration before reaching the results that they claimed they had. Here are just some details about how the model works. They have some thinking tags, and in between these thinking tags, there will be some reflection tags that will be the chain of thought parts that comes before the output. And so they will have a response within these thinking tags. It will correct within the reflection tags and then give an output response. And this is the system prompt they used to train it, and some of the parameters they had. So yeah, now I think I'll leave the floor to Nick for some related work.
Cool. Let me see if I can share my screen.
If not, I can just skim through the slides.
Yeah. Do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Cool. It's worth pointing out that this reflection model is not without its controversies after it was launched. Maybe you have followed the drama already. But the authors of the model have not been able to, not the authors necessarily, the people that download the model were not able to replicate the results, and then the authors of the model did a series of claims that they needed to retrain the model, and they're investigating the issue. Anyway, long story short, the results from reflection itself might not necessarily be as good as reported, but the idea behind it is worth keeping in mind, because it's not, it hasn't come out of thin air in a way. It follows a long line of work, which we're going to see here. So starting with the Wizard LM series, if you know it, this was a model that was released after a little bit after the ChatGPT launch, and then after we had the Alpaca dataset, which Angelo mentioned was improved with Alpagasus. Wizard LM was another version of an improvement on top of the Alpaca dataset that had not very high quality data because it was self-generated from the model. So they generated instead 250,000 instruction examples, taking the Alpaca dataset and trying to make it more complex, essentially using ChatGPT, the ChatGPT version that was available then, and fine-tuning on that more complicated data set, a strategy so-called Evoli Struct, like they managed to outperform Vicuna and Alpaca, basically the similar sort of approaches that fine-tuned the then Llama model, and we're able to get close to 90% of the ChatGPT, which was a teacher model. Now, the Wizard LM series, of course, continued when Llama 2 was launched. So the Wizard LM2 was published then, which got quite close to GPT-4 and Opus, what was basically the frontier models of the time, not surpassing them, but as the first version did, got quite close with this strategy. Probably the most close recipe and model series is the Orca one, which basically gets an order of magnitude more data, but that data is enhanced with explanations. So similar sort of chain of thought, reflection processes using GPT-4. They start instead from the FLAN dataset, which is not self-generated, and so it's of high quality to begin with, but they add explanations from GPT-4 in a way to be able to distill some of the better reasoning that this model has into a smaller model. Now, note, though, that this model is a smaller one. It's not like the sort of best open source model available. So it's a 13B, but it gets quite close to GPT-4 as well, using similarly complex, high-quality data. And then Orca was sort of there was a series 2 again, similar to Wizard LM, which expanded a little bit on the explanation strategy. So much more than just chain of thought explanations, very similar to what reflection tuning is, were added in the Orca 2. That also got close performance to the GPT version of that time. And then the final paper that's worth keeping in mind in this series of related work is one from OpenAI, where they tried to improve the reasoning of their model themselves. And in order to do that, they tested doing a better reasoning process on math alone, and they labeled the chain of thought process itself. So each step-by-step process that the model is following. They created a data set of 800,000 such thoughts labeled on whether they are correct or not. And they trained the model to verify basically whether a step of this thought process is correct. And what's worth saying is that first and foremost, majority voting using an LLM, which basically calibrates its own thinking. So if you ask the LLM 1,000 times and then you basically take the most, often response, which is similar in some ways to self-reflection, because it calibrates to the knowledge that the LLM has. That strategy is outperformed by this one, which points towards the fact that you do need some extra process in order to improve the reasoning other than what the LLM knows itself. So anyway, long story short, this is to say that OpenAI is already working on this. Some discussion points out of all this. I think training on diverse explanation data, which are complex and high quality, is a good strategy. Like, it's not a new one, and it's not one that doesn't work. Like, we know that works, and it's a good strategy to do so. In some ways, that's unsurprising. Now, there might have been a potential low-hanging fruit here because there was indeed a Llama 3.1 model available, and neither WizardLM nor Orca, which is a 13B model anyway, were updated to use the latest Llama. So just by basically replicating what WizardLM or Orca were doing on top of Llama 3.1 should give you a really good model. So there probably was a low-hanging fruit to begin with. But what's a little bit suspicious with Reflection is the fact that it performs better than frontier models. So all of these models like WizardLM and Orca, if you remember, they actually got close, but not better than the teacher model, whereas Reflection claims that it's better than, any model, which is probably not the case. And it's also worth keeping in mind that there is a rumored model coming out from OpenAI that is exactly going to be an improved reasoning model, probably borrowing ideas from the Verify step-by-step paper. So better reasoning models are coming quite soon, I think. And when those come, probably this whole discussion is going to be relevant. Any questions for me and Angela?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Like the first one, don't you think that maybe because maybe they already tried to replicate main work with that they did with Llama 2, and they did it with Llama 3 and didn't get like really significant results? Maybe it's also a possibility because generally with the speed of development of such models, I'm quite, let's say, surprised that there is no update of the model. So maybe the results are not as good as they used to be. I don't know.
You mean the WizardLM and the Orca series?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, good question. Llama 3.1 is not that old, I would say. I mean, you do need to run the experiments, but I think it's a fair point that these models anyway, they are encompassing a lot of these strategies in their training. So for example, Llama 3.170B is already distilled from the 405B. And most likely, because some of the papers that Angelo mentioned come from Meta itself, maybe some of the strategy of high quality, complex, what have you data is already incorporated in Llama 3.1. So what you're saying might actually be true, that there's no low-hanging fruit, maybe.
Yeah, and the thing is, for now, all the benchmarks that they ran on this reflection model, they were showing that the performance is not as they claim. So they probably were just overfitting on the benchmark tests within the model. So they have this private API that gave this performance, but when they made the model public, they published the weights on Hugging Face, and people reran the benchmarks. They were actually much worse than even Llama 3.1. So they were probably overfitting on the benchmark tests, and so since the model was contaminated, the benchmarks just flew up. But for now, there is no proof that actually this technique is improving Llama 3.1. There's just this model that they claimed that it was incredible, which is not.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general, we should be expecting to see, like these kind of techniques to be incorporated into models. So we're already seeing the distillation to be part now of training the smaller models. It's quite likely that also the using explanations and region tracing and all of these things are also going to be part of the instruction tuning step to begin with, if they're not already. Go, Maten.
Yeah, thanks. Have there been any studies on how much this kind of almost increases the cost of using the models, if that makes sense? Because if they're generating a lot more tokens in the explanations and reflection steps and everything, and the cost tends to scale with input and output tokens, it'd be interesting to see the kind of trade-off there.
Yeah. I think they tested this with the reflection model, and it was slower, and it was using many more tokens per second, tokens per response, and they weren't like specific on how much more, but they just said many more tokens. So obviously with efficiency improved, maybe this will not be a problem, but it is present in the model.
Okay, thanks.
I think though in general we will probably see some sort of compute budget in those models soon. So you can spend more compute, and then it will, like spend more either output tokens or generate more answers and do majority voting. I think there are some rumors that this is where this is going, but we will be able to pass the parameter of what's the maximum it can spend on a response.
Yeah. It's also, I guess, you'll arguably save a bit of time and money because you're not having to re-query it when it gets things wrong as much.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
So you might also mitigate that a bit because you're not having to re-query it as much when it gets things wrong because it won't get things wrong as much. So that improved accuracy will hopefully help offset the improved costs.
Yeah, maybe, but as we were saying, it actually didn't. So maybe yes. And
I think
sorry,
I have to leave as well for the Edify call, but I'll see you in Slack, okay?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we can. Yeah, just on this thing, Matt. I think it is an interesting topic to train models, but for now, like the implementation that they did with the Reflection 70B, it just didn't work.
Oh yeah, Reflection 70B certainly seems kind of suspect at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, the overall method seems good. Generally, a lot of improvements seem to be getting models to think things through more. Be interesting if we could get good explanations from LLMs, but that seems to be tricky at the moment.
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay. Then if you need to leave, Nick.
I think Nick has already left. I think that's just a freeze frame for whatever reason.
Oh yeah, I was saying, yeah, that's a bit weird. Like
he usually blinks more often than that.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
That was interesting. Thanks.
Are you feeling better, Raphael?
A bit. Not quite out of the woods yet, but it's getting better. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Thanks for asking.
No worries.
All right, and sorry for joining late. I kind of missed the connection there.
No worries.
All right. Well then, talk soon, guys, and have a nice day.
Bye. Bye, guys. You.
Bye.